All right, hello everyone. We are going to be looking at some homework this evening, and that's about it, unless some of you have questions. So let's go ahead and get right into it. This was a homework from that was submitted yesterday, and we have a good start here with the key label D major. The homework is a keyboard realization, and then we have a dash here under the bass, which means just the bass note is moving. All the other voices stay the same, which you're generously given a half note. So that's good and clear. And then we have our analysis of the figured bass underneath with then the realization in the right hand above. Now, overall, everything looks pretty good. There's just a couple of things I wanted to point out, which were the most common mistakes. For one, we have this 4-3 under the A in the bass. We're in D major. So that means that a fourth above the bass goes to a third. So we have the correct rhythm here of eighth notes in order to make that happen within the one beat, right? And we have the D there. The C sharp in the chord is not there, which is correct. That is good, because if we had a C sharp somewhere, then it would clash with the D. And then the D resolves to C sharp like it should. We have our full 5 chord, and that's all good. In this blank, I think the comment I had was you need to put 4-3 with the 5 figures. And remember, the figures that you're given are not enough for your analysis. In your analysis, you have to put your own figures. And that's because, as we will see in a little bit, the figures for playing the music, like this 5-4-2 and then 6-5-3, those are different than what you would put for an analysis label. Okay? Real quick, before we get to that though, let's back up to the 5 chord where it's 4-3 and take a look at that D, which is a non-chord tone, right? That D doesn't belong in a 5 chord. It is some sort of non-chord tone. Well, it is not a suspension, right? Because a suspension would have to be approached by the same pitch. And in our 2 chord, we have E, G, and B. Now, if we had 2-7 or 2-6-5, some sort of version of 2/7 chord, then we would have the D, and you could hold the D over before resolving it, right? But in this case, we have a B in the previous chord, jumping up to a D, and then resolving to C. So this D non-harmonic tone, if you were to label it, would be an incomplete neighbor tone, right? So that's, I thought, very important, because while we often think of this 4-3 like, oh, it's a 4-3 suspension, in this case, based on how it was written, the non-harmonic tone is actually an incomplete neighbor tone, not a suspension, right? So that's just what the figures tell you. The figure tells you what's above the bass. So going on, back to my point here with the 5-4-2 and 6-5-3. For these, you just have to write what the figures are above the bass note. So this person thought, oh, okay, we're in D. I see a 4-2. My best guess is a 2-4-2, and then going to 5-6-5. Well, 2 does go to 5, so the logic there is pretty sound. But if we were to find the intervals above the bass, let's see. We have a D in the bass. We have 5, 4, and 2. So a fifth above D is A. A fourth above D is G. And a second above D is E. So we have A. We have A for the fifth, G for the fourth. So we have that, and then we have a 2, which would be E. So we have A, E, and G, but we don't, if we try to stack in thirds, we're missing a C, right? We're missing the C from that. We have A, E, and G, we're missing a C, but instead we have a D, and that's because this D is a suspension, which then resolves to a C sharp in the next chord, which you see is 6-5-3, which is what we would expect for a first inversion 7th chord. And this was something I taught in my lesson. When the bass moves, all the figures also have to change, right? Because the figures are intervals above the base. So what this chord is a 5-6-5 with the base having the suspension. Now this is really truly a suspension because it's approached by the same pitch, right? We have a D in the chord before, goes to a D there, so that's a suspension, and then resolving. That's pretty tricky, right? Because if it wasn't in the bass, we would have another like 4-3 kind of thing happening. But since it's in the bass, everything changes. Excuse me. So be watching out for this. If you see the figures, all the figures change, chances are it could be a suspension or some sort of other non-harmonic tone in the bass. So you have to figure out what the chord is for those two chords and see if it works as being the same chord or if it is actually a different chord. Okay. And then here at the end, we had a 5-7-5-4 to 7-5-3. That all works. Adding the 4-3 in the figures is good. So you have 7-5-4, and then the 7 and 5 just hold over with dashes, and then the 4 has a dash to the 3 to show that that is actually resolving there. Okay, so there's that. And then I wanted to go over your homework for tomorrow real quick to see if there are any questions about that. So I will wait for a minute and see if there are questions. All right, sorry for that long pause. I have to make sure the stream is catching up with me and that I leave some time for people to leave some questions. So I don't see any right now. I'll check back in a little bit. But let's go over this real quick. So realize the following Roman numeral progressions in SATB style. So not keyboard style. This is kind of given to you as a hint with all these starting with an SATB voicing. The number one thing that people lost points for on the quiz, it was like, okay, here comes a chord with a chordal seventh, i.e. a dominant chord or a 2-7 or whatever. It's like, here comes taking a point off because they forgot to have the chordal seventh resolved down by step, right? The chordal seventh always resolves down by step. Doesn't matter the voice it's in, it resolves down by step. You can put that on a sticky note, stick it on your bathroom mirror. The chordal seventh resolves down by step. And if you're unsure what the chordal seventh means, that means in the 5-7 chord in F minor, we would have C, E, G, B flat is the chordal seventh because B flat is a seventh above the root C, right? In the 2 chord in F minor, we would have E, G, B flat, and then D flat. No, excuse me, because we have E flat. So it would be E flat, G flat, and then, what am I spelling? 2 half diminished seventh in F minor. Oh, I went the wrong way. Sorry. It would be G, B, D flat, and then F. So F is the seventh above G. There we go. Okay, so that seventh always resolves down every time. Do it or you're going to lose a full point. Okay, it's not a half point. It's not a little mistake anymore. It's like as wrong as getting the notes in the chord wrong. So make sure you're checking that. All right, so we have our new 3 chord going to 5-4-3. Make sure the 7th resolves down. Going to 1, a new 3 chord going to 4 instead of 5, right? Which then 4 goes to 5. And then in the last example, 1-6-3, okay? And then 2-6-5-7-1. There you go. And then for an analysis, label the key, apply Roman numerals to each chord with figures. Notice that, with figures as appropriate. So you'll need to account for some of these things in your figures. Just like in last time's homework, you had to write 5, 4, 3 to show that there was a fourth moving to a third, right? And then you have to answer what type of embellishing tone occurs in measure 3, and then account for it with figures in your analysis. Okay, so that's like a redundant instruction, but that's how important it is, right? We don't want you to miss that. So if there's no questions on this, I think that is kind of good enough for this evening. And we have a guest in lecture tomorrow, so that'll be fun, and can't wait to see what they have to teach you all. Looking forward to seeing you then. Thanks, and have a great night, everyone.